Hello, welcome back to another episode of Initial Impressions. My name is Kayli Pommering, and I'll be your host today. This is a podcast dedicated to helping you feel more at peace. And today I'm so excited to have one of my very best friends in the whole world on the show, Savannah Schaffer. You want to introduce
Hi
yourself?
guys. Hey, I'm back. Last time that I was here, I was a couple months postpartum. And now my daughter is like a year and a half plus, and I'm so happy to be back on this podcast with you guys. And I cannot wait to see what comes from this episode.
Yes, Savannah actually is a life coach too, and she has a wellness podcast as well. We're so aligned in like so many ways. Give a little shout out for your podcast.
Yes. So I started my own podcast just a couple months ago, and I am absolutely loving it. It's called the Secrets to Alignment Podcast with Savannah Schaffer. And I talk all things about mental health and wellness and just everything when it comes to manifesting your dream life and just living a more mindful and connected lifestyle.
Yes, I love that. Okay, all the good things for sure. It's really nice having someone so close to me that I feel like we're so aligned in so many ways about what we want to do and like the impact we want to have. And we both have our own like fun ways of doing it. So I always get excited when we can collaborate on stuff. And
So cool.
yesterday, actually, I was on another call with Sav, and she was just like really laying it out there. And I was just like, damn, this is so good. This would make such a good podcast episode. So I called you afterwards and I was like, okay, girl, can we get on the podcast because this needs to be an episode. And
Definitely.
I think like where I want to start it out with was I loved how you were talking about the difference between emotions and feelings. And I would love to kind of start there if you're cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to emotions and feelings, I feel like a lot of us kind of think that it's the exact same thing. I know that I definitely did. I thought that everything was a feeling slash an emotion. And from all of the just learning that I have gone through, I've discovered that feelings are actually a response to the perception of an emotion that you are experiencing. Whereas emotions are an immediate response to an internal or external stimuli. So when it comes to your feelings are really just created based on the perception that maybe you had growing up on how an emotion is processed, or like let's say like when you're having a meltdown and your mom is just kind of going in on you for feeling really upset and sad, then you might start to feel guilty for experiencing the emotion of sadness. And then that's where a lot of things start to get confused and just wrapped up, and we don't need that. So separating the two allows you to, you're not really able to have control over a emotion that's coming up for you, but you do have control of the feelings that you experience in relation to that emotion.
Yeah, so kind of like something happens, you get that like endorphin, basically, that
Yeah,
like
that
automatic
initial.
endorphin. But then what thoughts you think about that initial feeling and the way that you respond to that creates your feeling and like how that perpetuates essentially.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And that's
Yeah.
where like I feel like a lot of people can get into like a downward spiral, or they can really start to tear themselves apart for feeling a specific thing or
Yeah.
experiencing a certain emotion. And so that's where you really want to start to grab control and a lot of awareness around what the emotions are that you are experiencing so that it doesn't lead to things that are blown out of proportion or taken out of context.
So let's say somebody, they have a common emotion that pops up for them in like specific situations, and it kind of tends to lead through to a spiral that maybe it ruins their whole day, or they feel so guilty, or they feel like something's wrong with them because they're having these feelings. And it seems like, I know for me, it has in the past, like it happens so fast. What
Oh
would you
yeah.
recommend to a person that doesn't like the feelings that they get after something happens? How would you recommend that they really slow that process down?
Yes, I would say the first thing is just becoming an observer of what you're experiencing. So I think that the biggest and the most recent situation that I have experienced with this is actually something that happened with Aria and I at a park where we felt very unsafe. And I had a lot of anxiousness come up, but the anxiousness was stemming from fear. And I started to immediately recognize, okay, my entire body just had this response to an experience that we were going through. And as soon as it came up, I witnessed what was going on. And instead of like starting to freak out over this experience that we were going through, I really just started to observe, okay, what am I feeling here? What am I experiencing? What is the emotion that's coming up? And just left it at that instead of allowing it to just talk me into all of these other things, because that's where we start to lose control
Mhm.
and we're no longer in a productive mindset, because then you're jumping to worst case scenarios and you're just going down this downward spiral, like you were saying. And so I think that the best thing that you can do is develop a very strong awareness over what is the emotions that you are experiencing throughout your daily life. I think that that's really important. Like, for example, when I am at the park and I'm pushing Arya in the swing, I get this rush of joy and fulfillment. And I just feel so like happy and excited and whatever it is. And so whenever I experience emotions now, I actually acknowledge them as an emotion so that I can start to develop this relationship with my emotions where I'm not losing track of what is going on, where a lot of times we do that. I guess that's the best way that I can explain it, but ask for any clarification if you need.
Yeah, so I think essentially what I'm hearing is be an active observer of your thoughts.
Yes,
Like
for
you
sure.
should be aware of everything that you're thinking throughout the day. There shouldn't be unattended thoughts, pretty much. If something happens, you should be able to think, okay, what was my last thought and know what it was, Because I think so often we do go on autopilot and disconnect and literally lose track of keeping up with ourselves. And so then things happen and we're in a bad mood, and suddenly we've been in a bad mood all day, and not once have we really asked ourselves what was wrong or when was the first time that I felt this way. I think kind of piggybacking off of that, I've really been trying to practice when a negative feeling happens, I try to notice it as soon as it starts. Like as soon as a negative
Yes.
emotion starts, I'm literally just like, wait, what just happened? What was I just
Awareness,
thinking? Like,
for sure.
where did it disconnect? And then
Yeah.
I think even what you were saying too, it sounds like part of that, part of being able to respond to that emotion and send it the direction that you want to go in is also not villainizing it, because that
Yes.
you feeling afraid, that wasn't a bad thing. Like in your situation, it was good that you were afraid. And if you would have villainized that and told yourself, like, oh, you're just being paranoid, like you're just like whatever, all these things, then you would have missed your intuition literally giving you a download.
Yeah.
So, like,
And that's exactly what I did do at first. Like, I'm not amazing at this. And when those emotions take over, you absolutely can get super wrapped up into that. And I did for a second. And I was like, wait, am I judging this man for literally being at a park with his daughter right now? And like, I just started thinking about all these different things. And if you don't know what the story is, go on my Instagram and you can go watch the video. I don't want to get into the full thing here, but I did start to judge myself for judging someone else instantly. Cause I was like, Savannah, like, I'm a good person. Like, I'm not gonna sit there and make a villain out of this man that's in front of me when I don't know what his intentions are. And I almost started to talk myself out of it. And then I continuously picked up on more things and these emotions that were continuously sparking within me. And thankfully, I trusted that intuition that was there. But it definitely isn't the easiest thing. And I remember even after the situation, feeling very overwhelmed by emotions and what I had experienced. And I was like, wow, why can't I get a hold on this? Like, why can't I just reel this in and like forget about it? Why can't I just like distract myself and stop thinking about this certain situation? But instead of doing that, I told myself, Savannah, it's okay. Like it's okay to feel this and actually you're supposed to experience this. Like you are supposed to go through this and feelings are meant to be felt. Same with your emotions. Like your emotions and your feelings are there for a reason. They are communicating to you. And when you develop that relationship with your thoughts and that awareness to the highest extent that you can, it allows you to slow things down a lot quicker and you can get ahead of that villainizing and all of those different things that you had just mentioned.
for sure, that is so true. It can be easy to definitely get stuck in ruts
Oh
and
yeah,
not realize how much your perspective is actually
altered.
continuing your feelings, is altered, perpetuating them. I was
Hmm.
thinking when you were talking about like pushing Arya on the swings and like how you got so happy, like that is a perfect opportunity to ride that wave of thoughts, right?
Oh,
Like
yes.
one thought to
Yes.
the next thought to the next thought of just being grateful and perpetuating that feeling as much as you can. And you can do that in any direction, like you have the
Yeah.
power and the opportunity to do that in any direction.
Yeah.
Like
That's something that I'm very intentional about for sure. And like anytime that I experience anything positive, I literally say out loud, please, universe, bring me more of this. Because
yeah.
I want that to be the focus here. And I don't want to miss those magical moments that I actually desire so much more of.
Yeah, you're always so good about that. Anytime I'm in Vegas and we're driving around, me and her just like take turns saying things we're grateful for. Like we're
Yeah.
literally just like, and I'm so grateful for this. And then the sunset looks so pretty. And like,
Yes.
yeah, we're dorks, but we're
Yeah.
happy dorks, right? Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
literally.
Something that you also had mentioned just about being on autopilot. As soon as you said that, I just thought about the subconscious mind and how the subconscious mind actually is running like 95% of the show at all times. And that is kind of hard. A lot of the thoughts that you have, I think that it's also like 95% of the thoughts that you have are repeated thoughts throughout the day. So
Mm.
we are constantly thinking and feeling like the exact same things, and when you can develop this mindset of mindfulness, slowing down, maybe taking a second to meditate or just taking a second to take one deep breath, whatever it is that you are doing to connect with yourself, you're actually interrupting that thought process that has been on repeat or has been on autopilot, like a CD disc. You're actually like pausing the CD disc where it's at instead of allowing it to continue, continue, continue. And what's awesome is the more pauses that you put into that CD disc, you're actually able to like rewrite it. And like you can get more detailed of like, actually, this is how I want to feel throughout my day. This is how I want to continue to experience my life at this vibration with these thought processes rather than the ones that maybe you have kept on repeat ever since you were a child.
Yeah, wow. It's like actually insane when you think about how much I hadn't even heard that before. That, what was it? 95% of your thoughts are like repeated thoughts.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just like insane. No wonder our lives only
Or
change so much,
cycles.
right?
Yeah. Cycles.
They just literally stay in like the same ruts. And I think like
Yeah.
another thing that I wanted to hit on when you were talking about this and how it affected my mindfulness journey too is a disclaimer that when you start this process, there's going to be moments where you're like the happiest you've ever been. And there's going to be a lot of moments where that happiness and that peace is genuinely uncomfortable because you're not used to it. And there's
Yeah.
such a tendency to go back to familiar, even if familiar is uncomfortable. And I wanted to hear your perspective on this a little bit and how to deal with that. You're stepping into a new era, you're stepping into new habits. How do you become comfortable in this new chapter of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first, like you said, prefacing it and kind of knowing this is going to be uncomfortable, like that is really the first step of just having that awareness of just being like, all right, this is a whole new version of me that I'm stepping into. So it's going to be crazy. I may take some steps backwards at different points in time, but that comes back to not villainizing those moments of when you are taking a step back, or when you do, let's say like you're going 5 days and you're like, I've been feeling amazing for these 5 days. And then on that sixth day, you're like, I just don't understand why, but I'm feeling so off. I don't feel like myself. I don't feel as excited as I felt yesterday. And you start to look at all these things, and instead of becoming just aware of it, you start to freak out and say, oh my gosh, I'm never going to change. Why am I back in the same place? This is the same cycle that I've been in again. And you're starting to just create this whole story around you being simply a human and experiencing life. Like you don't need to do that. You absolutely don't. So I would say when it comes to going through this massive change, keeping habits in your life that allow you to connect with what you're feeling is one of the most important things. Because if you're not connecting with that, that's where you're going to get lost and set on autopilot and then going right back to the way that you were before. So when you can start to check in with yourself on a daily basis, or at least every other day, for me, it's a daily basis because I want to stay that on top of myself in a good way because I want to be feeling amazing every freaking day. If you're not taking that time to do that, then you lose track and you're going to notice that you're just all of a sudden feeling off and you're not feeling the way that you desire. And it's because you're no longer in control. And unfortunately, some of this process, especially in the beginning, is being in control and it's holding the reins and it's not just surrendering just yet. Yes, surrender is going to come soon, but like in the beginning, you kind of do have to hold yourself to the habits that make you feel good and embodying this next level version of yourself on a daily basis, even when it is a little bit uncomfortable, because eventually that's just going to be a signature of who you are. But in the beginning, it's not that easy. And for me personally, I have to kind of hold myself to a certain standard and make sure that I am rising up to the occasion, where I know that you have a little bit of a different, like, what would be the word here? You have a different way of going about that. Like you're more so of like, I'm gonna like let whatever comes up come up and me feel whatever I feel and like very intuitive. I'm more so of like, I gotta kind of be a little bit more disciplined on this and be and make this habit something that I do not let go of for X amount of time. And then for me, it just becomes part of who I am. And then I'm able to kind of loosen those reins because it's just a part of me and it's not something that I'm still trying to like grasp, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. And it's so funny to me because ironically enough, I feel like me and you both are always like teaching each other how to do the opposite one a little bit
Yeah,
better. Like we're like yin
totally.
yang for sure. You're like, yes, intuition
Totally.
is great, but also like a little push, right? A little discipline. And I'm like,
Yeah.
savvy, if you need a day, take a day, you know?
Yes,
But like I love that
100%.
for us because like we
Yeah.
help to balance each other out. But there was one thing I wanted to go back to that you said that I really liked, and that was like your number one priority, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like what you were saying is like your number one priority is not showing up perfectly actually and having all those habits be done perfectly, but making the number one habit showing up and like connecting with yourself. Just
Yes.
staying aware. Like even if like you're not
Completely.
doing it right, even if you're not showing up all the ways you want to show up, at least touch base with yourself enough to recognize that that's what's happening. Like you would with
Yes.
a partner, you know? I just kept thinking about that when you were talking. I was like, this is how a lot of people want their relationships with their significant other to be like you don't want to go a day without really touching base, even if it's not long. You just want to check in like, hi, you're doing good, everything went okay for you. You check in on your partner, but there's just not that emphasis in our culture the same way for me to be like, hey, how did today go? Did I have a good day?
Totally.
You know, and that I
Yeah.
could see how important that would be, because at least if you check in with yourself and you're like, things really just kind of didn't go right today, like everything kind of was roadblocking me, then when you know you didn't show up for yourself, you can say, look, it was just a shitty day.
Yeah.
I'm not broken. I'm not set back. Growth isn't linear. I'll try again tomorrow. But when you don't
Absolutely.
do that check-in, you don't get that opportunity to give yourself grace. And instead you're just like, why even try?
Yeah.
I haven't changed.
Yeah. And then you're going day after day after day of feeling like that. And then again, you find yourself in that rut. And I think that, like, what's also really important to this conversation is life is full of distractions constantly. I mean, we have a supercomputer in our hands at all times. And so, anytime that a thought comes up that you don't like, you could absolutely go ahead and open up TikTok. Every single day that you're feeling overwhelmed, you could absolutely go and sit in your bed and just like watch Netflix and not think about what you had experienced that day and whatever. And I think, especially when you're having emotional days where you are experiencing intense things, whether that's anger or it's upset or sadness or whatever. I think that a lot of times we just go straight to distraction
Yeah.
and we don't want to think about what we had just experienced. I know for me, like that was the first thing that I wanted to do after I had experienced what I did with Aria at the park. I literally wanted to come home and smoke a joint. And like I didn't want to think about absolutely
Yeah.
anything. I wanted to sit on the couch and like watch Finding Nemo. Like I didn't want to think. But I knew that if I did that, I'm just going to suppress. I'm just going to continue to feel that thing. And it's going to come up, but maybe it's going to come up now in a totally different aspect. And I'm going to treat my partner poorly because I haven't dealt with what's going on in my head. And
Yeah.
that to me is just unacceptable. Like, we all have a responsibility to deal with what we are going through because everyone around you deserves to get the best version of you, including your friends, including your family, and especially if you have children. So it is your responsibility to take accountability, to check in with yourself, to know what are the thoughts going through my head, what are the emotions that I'm feeling on a daily basis, so that you can best show up for everyone around you and you're not carrying all this extra baggage on your back that's holding you down and like making you feel tired and gross and sassy and all of these things. Like if you just,
Unfocused, brain
yeah,
fog,
exactly.
staticky. Like it's so wild actually how like before you start really doing this work, you don't realize how much of that consistent feeling of anxiety and like lack of clarity and fatigue literally come from you not dealing with your shit. Like
Yeah.
it's literally just it's sitting on the back burner. It's like when you have all 500 tabs of your phone open and it's literally running like lagging. It's like
Yeah.
shutting off, it's getting hot, like it can't function properly because you need to fucking close the tabs out, like and
Totally.
it's so similar to that. Like your body just is
You're
not
on
meant to
overdrive.
have, yeah, all of that going on. It's literally eating up all your brain capacity. And it's so ironic too, because first of all, preface, I've done this a million times. That's how I know. But when you just go and you scroll on social media instead of just like facing and really contemplating what it is that upset you and why it upset you and like facing the feelings, you literally just feel worse.
Yeah.
You get that immediate gratification, the dopamine hits from scrolling. And then the second you get off and you're sitting there, you feel worse than you did before and you want to get back on. And then that turns into days of you doing that and then weeks of you doing that. And then you're depressed as hell and you're like, what happened? And it's like, you got to check in. You got to.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that that's a lot of times what leads to just your nervous system being completely dysregulated.
Yeah.
And your nervous system being dysregulated leads to so many other things like illness and so many bigger problems. And so if you're experiencing a lot of things that you're so confused about, I would really take a look at how are you actually feeling on a daily basis? Is your body constantly under stress? Or are you constantly distracting yourself from the stress that you do have, but you don't want to face? Like all of these things, they are so interconnected. And when you start to get into personal development on a really deep level, you realize how much of a holistic experience this really is, how everything connects to everything else, and how you're treating yourself and how you're showing up for yourself is going to be a direct result of how the universe also shows up for you and how you are now feeling, experiencing your health, your productivity, everything else is all connected to what's going on in your mind. And I think that's why it's so important to take control before it takes control over you.
Yeah, so good. So good. I even know like for myself, there are things that I like to do every day to check in. And like for me,
Mhm.
it's meditating. And I want to get more into journaling too. I actually recently heard of one where you open your voice memos and you talk in your voice
Yeah,
memos and
same.
then you play it back. And not only like is it easier than journaling, but you can hear the way that your voice says things. And so, like, let's say if you think that you're happy about something, but then when you listen to it, you're like, I don't sound happy about that.
That's
Like, and it
crazy.
it kind
So
of helps to
true.
show you like the differences between how you've been thinking you should be feeling about something versus like how you actually feel. But I would love to
Agreed.
hear, like, I know you love to journal a lot. Can you walk me through a little bit of what that process of journaling and reflecting looks like for you on like a daily basis?
Absolutely, yes. So I have been journaling since the first memories I remember are like me being 6 years old, journaling and just writing down like who I liked and who my friends were and things like that. And it's been something that has stuck with me my entire life. And I love it so much. I recently started journaling on a daily basis in 2019, though. And I started journaling on a daily basis because I was really wanting to get into manifestation and like creating my dream life and feeling the way that I would like to feel on a daily basis and all these things. And so when I had started to develop that process, I realized that a lot of it does come from awareness, and that awareness is key. And the best way for me to personally connect with myself is to sit down and actually write out my thoughts, because back to that distraction point, if you're just constantly trying to think through things, it's really, really difficult to stay connected to what the thought was, because then all of a sudden a car goes by and you're like, oh, I really like that kind of car. Or like something else happens that takes you off that track. So for me, journaling is my way of fully expressing the thoughts that are in my mind with zero distractions and allowing a thought to go wherever it's going to take me and not having to stop in the middle of it or anything like that. So, on a daily basis, all I do is open up my journal and just write what's coming to me. And typically it starts out like I have it sitting right next to me. Typically it starts out with, "Good morning, beautiful. I'm so grateful for another day," or "Good morning, beautiful. I slept like shit last night, or good morning, beautiful, like whatever it is that actually I'm feeling and experiencing, that's what just spills out onto the paper. And sometimes it's all about work. And it's like, I'm so excited to have a day full of working with clients and helping all these people. And I love making an impact. And I can't wait to be doing this on stage. And I'm just like talking through all these different things. And then other times it's like, wow, I got into this conversation with my mom and I wish that it would have went this way, but unfortunately it went this way and I'm expressing that. Or this has been top of mind for me and my relationship right now is looking like this. Whatever is going on in my life, that's what's going on to that paper. And it's jumping from topic to topic constantly. It's from work to relationships to friendships to what I have going on in my podcast, what I want to talk about, how grateful I'm feeling, what's going on in the world, the full moon that's happening right now and how I'm feeling about that. Like it's really about every single thought that goes through my mind in the morning. I like to get onto paper and it's a brain dump for me because I don't like to have all those things spinning up in my head. I have so many things that I have to do in a day that need energy to be put towards that. And if I'm constantly thinking all of these thoughts, I'm not going to be present in the moment. And
Mm.
so it's really my way of like clearing out everything that I need to so that I can actually be present. And when I wake up my daughter after I journal, I can actually be there with her and be super excited to see her versus being like, oh my gosh, I need to make sure that I talk to my client about this and need to make sure that I go to the grocery store today or whatever. Like I don't have to get so much in my head about all these other responsibilities that I have because I've already taken care of that. And I'm like, okay, I will go to the grocery store after I go to the gym. And like, I just can think through things that are so minuscule and tiny and so detailed, but it allows me to show up with more ease and peace because of that. So I typically am just doing a brain dump. Sometimes I am talking about the meditation that I just now experienced. Other times it's me like journaling a day in my life at 25 years old and what that will look like, or when Arya is 5 or whatever. And all of those different things are just there to support me, and I love 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 having that as a habit in my life.
Girl, you're making me want to pull my journal out.
I know.
I know, like maybe I have journal after this.
Good.
No, I definitely feel like it makes a huge impact to do that. I feel like I hear all the time that people are like, "Oh, I don't know what to journal about," and everything.
Totally.
But it's kind of cool, like what you're saying. You don't always have to have prompts. Not everything has to
Totally.
be super organized. Like there aren't rules. Just pull out a
No.
paper and just like start writing. I know I've even done brain dumps before where there's not even the intention of having a sentence. Like I'm
Yeah.
just whatever comes out. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love like what you're saying.
Set a timer for 5 minutes and see what spills out onto the paper. Like you are bound to come across something. And I really do think that when I am the most emotional, that is what I rely on absolutely most. Like there is other times where I am journaling morning and night because I'm just feeling a lot. And for me, I don't want it to spin up in my head and make these situations bigger than they need to be. I just want to reel it in, write it all out, and then I can go to sleep with not trying to think on more things.
Yeah. Especially when you're doing something like this for the first time, I think there can be like resistance towards doing it or like this overall feeling of kind of wanting to be avoidant. But the negatives always seem so much scarier before you
Yeah.
face them. They seem so much bigger before you like do the work. And
Yeah.
once you're like in it and you're doing it and you're writing it all out and you're like facing it, it genuinely isn't as scary or uncomfortable as you thought it would be. And
Yeah.
I
And
think
it feels so
sitting
much
in
lighter.
unknown for sure. And I think sitting in that unknown, not really touching base with yourself, that separation between you and you is actually so much more uncomfortable than the uncomfortability of facing whatever negative emotion is that you're thinking. And like
I
you were
agree.
even saying, to tie it back to what you were saying earlier, you're going to lash out at things that are unrelated because of that unresolved stuff. Because when those things become like they linger in the background, it can turn into insecurities and triggers. And that like affects you taking things super personally or just
Totally.
like not knowing how to communicate effectively. And I know we talked about this a little bit the other day too. I'd love to kind of hit on that. Like, what do you think causes people taking things too personally? And like, what do you do about that?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that there's a lot of things that play into this. I think that your childhood is one of the biggest ones, whether your parents were there to make you feel safe when you expressed how you felt. And whether or not you actually felt like you could even express yourself in general. I think that that's a big one. But when it comes to taking things more personally, I would say that we take things personally because they could be things that we subconsciously think about ourselves. And then when someone points it out, you're like, oh, and then it really stings.
Mm.
So I gave an example yesterday on our call about how I have always been referred to as clumsy growing up. My mom would never place like any glass in my hands at any point in time because I would drop it and I would break everything. And I always saw that as like a character flaw in me for all the way up until I was like probably a year ago or something. I've always seen that as something and I need to work on this. I can't be so clumsy and like I just can't be like that. And I remember like Ty would make little jokes about me being clumsy. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, I don't understand why he's so mean to me and like all this stuff. But really it was because I'm actually really mean to myself about that trait. And so I had to reframe the way that I see my clumsiness. And this is just a little example, but now I see my clumsiness as like something super silly and whatever. It's just not this big story that I've created around it. So I think that we take things personally a lot of the times because subconsciously we think them of ourselves. Maybe we have been brought up in a way where you were constantly being criticized about everything that you did. And so then when you start to get that criticism from anybody else, you start to feel really bad about it. And then it just spirals into something bigger. I would say like just over analyzing things is a big one as well, is you start to just get really, really in your head when it comes to overthinking, and anything that you do, you just blow way out of proportion. So if you're over analyzing what you did and how you said something or what actions you took in whatever situation it was, if you start to just get into this place where you're tearing yourself apart for all of those things, that can be you taking something personally when someone was actually just going through something on their side and maybe they responded short to you or they said things in a certain way and you're taking it super personally like, oh my gosh, I fucked up, I did this thing, when really it has nothing to do with you. That person's just tired, hasn't eaten yet, and they're feeling like really, really gross that day. So I think that that's something that I've really had to work on personally, is taking things personally, because especially being in a relationship with a man who's a fireman, I've really had to disconnect from, okay, like, is this about me, or has he not slept? Has he not eaten? Like, I really have had to disconnect that, because before I would just really get in my head, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything wrong. And it's just not, it's not beneficial for me and it's not good for my growth. And it's especially not good for my self love and the perception that I have about myself, because now I'm just thinking of I'm not enough and I'm never going to be perfect enough for this man and whatever. And it's just like, it has nothing to do with me again.
Yeah, that self-talk is so important because it's literally what determines whether or not you have the strength to feel confident and supported and worthy, even when other people tell you things that could indicate
Yes.
like differently than that, like that
Yes.
self-talk is that backbone really that keeps you sure of who you are. Um,
Yes. And
and
when
I
you're
think
journaling, that's where you can really develop that relationship with yourself. Because, like,
yeah,
for me, I'm constantly hyping myself up because I see that I'm such an amazing freaking human being. But if I'm not telling myself that, then I will start to think I'm not doing things good enough, or like I will get in my head about how I actually am. And it's not true. None of it is true. So I
it's
use a
not
lot of my
true and it's not
journaling.
productive. It's
Exactly.
and everybody makes it seem like being self-deprecating constantly is the better thing to do. Like that makes you selfless or something. And it literally
No.
doesn't because you don't
No.
show up as good for the people you love when you're self-deprecating. You're not able to stand in the part of you that makes you so amazing, that makes you such a benefit to this world. And you can't give when you're in that state. You can't create like that. It just doesn't work.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you.
Well, that's about all the time that we have. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Savvy, for coming on today.
I'm so
Yeah,
happy to be here. I
there's
love
so
talking with
many.
you.
Yeah, I do too. There's so many gems in this episode. I'm very excited to share. If you liked this episode, if it helped you, please like and subscribe. And check out Savvy's podcast. Where
Mhm.
can we find you?
Yes, you can find me at all streaming platforms, the Secrets to Alignment podcast. You can also find me on Instagram at Sav Schaffer. I'd love to have you there. And also, like, just please reach out if there's anything that we said in this episode that you were like, wait, what about this? Or how does this pertain to this? Reach out, ask us questions. Like, we are here to support you. And I think that her and I both just love to give to others. So if there's anything that you need help with or support on, please, please, please reach out to us and we will be there.
Absolutely. Do not hesitate. And as always, I hope you are leaving more at peace than you came. Bye.